Borough are well and truly in the mire at the moment after a 10th consecutive league game without a win. Their performance at West Bromwich Albion on Saturday was totally unacceptable. I think probably based on a lack of confidence as much as anything else, in addition to the fact, of course, that they can't put chances away and aren't defending very well. Altogether, it's a bit of a mismatch, and there's a lot of work needed doing in many areas for the team to turn the corner. At the moment, you can't see them winning a single game, and that's a very, very worrying. Thing about football is it's all it changes so quickly. So there's no reason to assume that Middlesbrough can't turn the corner at some time. You get a fluke goal, suddenly confidence arises, you get a win, and all of a sudden you put it together a run of results. Certainly we know that there is quality in the squad because of what they achieved in the first 3 months of the season. Some good performances, top half of the table, culminating in that win at Aston Villa, at which time Middlesbrough were receiving plaudits from all over the country. Since then, it's been a gradual slide, not so much in performances, because there's still been one or two good ones during the last 10 games, but certainly in terms of results. And the overriding pattern is that they do miss chances at one end and let unnecessary goals in the other one. So this is something that hasn't been sorted out during this slide, and of course it's getting worse. They went to West Brom on Saturday for a match they really had to win, and were 1-0 down in 4 minutes, albeit to a fluke goal, and as far as I'm concerned it was offside. When the ball was crossed to Chris Brunt at the time, he was in an offside position. The linesman should put up his flag at that time because the player who the ball is intended for is offside. It isn't an interpretation case in my opinion, it's a straight clear-cut offside, but the flag didn't go up, and then we got the argument out, oh well, interpretation after that, as West Brom went on to score a goal as a result of it. That's just rubbish to me. It was offside, it shouldn't have stood, but it did stand, and the game really was defined in what happened over the next 2 minutes. Borough went down the pitch, won a free kick, Stuart Downing floated it over, the goalie palmed it out, Chris Riggett knocked it back in, and Afonso Alves missed an open goal, you might argue, heading against the crossbar. I felt at that moment that Middlesbrough's heads went down almost immediately. Not totally, but in a way that you could tell in their performance that the belief had suddenly gone. Almost as though it's not going to be our day again, and it certainly wasn't. A fluke goal brought number 2, another couple of misses from Alves, and then when Middlesbrough were all at sea and more or less giving up, they conceded the 3rd goal. Then we had, of course, the Didier Degas sending off. I don't think Borough can argue about that. He had his foot up. Once you show your studs, it's a signal to the referee, please send me off. You shouldn't do that sort of thing. It's happened, and now we're facing the prospect of being without the influential Degas for the next 3 games, which of course is a big, big negative. So all in all, a terrible state of affairs at the moment, and a lot is needed if the team is to sort of get back on track. After the match, a lot of questions were asked to Gareth Southgate about his personal situation, and the manager admitted that he could be facing the axe. I think that's a fair comment, based on 10 matches without a win, allied to that dreadful performance at West Brom. Things aren't acceptable at the moment, and when these sort of situations happen, you point your finger at the manager. In many respects, I think Southgate's case is slightly different in that he has the full backing of Steve Gibson. Not that Gibson is a totally loyal chairman in the long run. He's sacked every manager he's been involved with except for Steve McLaren. So we shouldn't think that Southgate is unsackable, but I do think that they've been working very closely over the last 2.5 years. Chairman, Chief Executive Keith Lamb and Manager Southgate, really in a triumvirate, so to speak, work things out together. Let's not rush into decisions, let's discuss everything in detail, let's come to a decision, even if it's 2-1 the voting, that suits everybody. Southgate's gone along with that. In many respects, he's much more of a coach than he is a manager. But That doesn't mean he's unsackable. One thing the manager has to do is motivate the squad. And after 10 matches without a win, you would assume that the motivation factor isn't very good at the moment. I do think he has tried one or two different things. I don't think he's frightened to use different tactics. Some have been successful, some haven't. But at the end of the day, you've got to find the odd one or two that is bringing results, and he isn't able to do that at the moment. They've had some terrific bad luck at the moment, but you can't just blame bad luck. You've got to work harder, that little bit harder, to make sure you get good luck. So yeah, it's probably fair that the finger should point at Gareth at the moment. He does have a lot more to do. He's well aware of that fact. I think he's got the backing of the chairman at the moment, but it doesn't go on forever. And he has to get results. Obviously they're at Wolves in the FA Cup on Saturday. Tough game there, an interesting one. Maybe they can play with a little bit more freedom. After that they go to Chelsea. Everybody's written that off already, which is probably a good thing as far as Borough are concerned, because who knows, they might get something as a result of that. Then, of course, we have the crunch game, January the 31st, home to Blackburn. Borough have lost the last 4 games at home to Blackburn. That doesn't bode very well, but it's still a crunch match for Gareth Southgate and his players. They must win it, no ifs or buts. It's really potentially a watershed situation. Let's see what happens. In the current state of affairs, you can't just sit back and accept it. You have to be doing things that seem to be proactive to help the club move forward. At this moment in time, we continue to be told there is no money, that Borough can't go out and strengthen the squad. This would be the obvious thing to do, freshen up the squad. We see a lot of Premier League sides doing that at the moment to good effect. But it's not happening here because of lack of funds. There has been the opportunity to create funds by selling Stuart Downing, obviously, to Tottenham, and selling Gary O'Neill to Portsmouth. Again, Borough have decided not to do that. OK, fair dues, that's their decision. Certainly, I fully agree with the decision not to sell Downing, because I think that he's by far the best player. He certainly was at West Brom. Without Downing, I think the team would be a lot worse off, even if you bring in 2 new players. I think that he must stay. Certainly, I might have been tempted to sell Gary O'Neill, although I really wouldn't have wanted to see him go. I'm just trying to think that you must have some way of freshening up the side. That seems to be the major problem at the moment. Big links to Ben Watson at Crystal Palace. The Evening Gazette was the first newspaper, obviously, to make that link. That link seems to be going on because their manager has said that Middlesbrough have inquired. Whether Middlesbrough could find the £1 million or so that would be needed to sign him and bring him here remains to be seen. Not so much on the loan front, although I do understand that Middlesbrough is still trying to work hard to bring in players who are out of contract this month. There aren't many of them, of course. There are 1 or 2 throughout Europe. Olivier Descartes was one who was mentioned, but he apparently won't be coming here. There are others that Middlesbrough are aware of. Talks and inquiries and things are going on at the moment. No obvious information that anything is definitely happening yet, but they do have to do something. You can't just sit back. I've already mentioned motivation. In many respects, confidence is 90% of the game, or so managers and coaches will tell you. Therefore, it's up to Gareth Southgate and his coaches to raise confidence. I don't know how they can do that, but I'm not a football coach. It has to be done. The work is needed on the training ground to get the team fully primed up again. Borough have to turn the corner. The alternative is relegation. That's unacceptable with half the season to go. Plenty of time to turn things round, but the work has to start now.